Luca Lunetto finds himself completing the top 5 at the moment and is on an improved lap. Rueda and Munoz are up inside the top 3 now. They are lapping together, it seems. This is Lunetto coming through the final corner, the Misano corner, running out to the curb, diving for the line. Lunetto finds himself going through Q1. Hard luck for Luca Lunetto yesterday, I've got to say. Looked like he was going to be in. Didn't quite manage to get that one over the line and down in 15th. So he's one of the favourites to move through from Q1 into Q2. But for a rider who's coming back from quite a nasty leg break back at Assen, he was back last time out, but this is his first real run at things, because when you're coming back from injury, you're just trying to get a feeling for the bike, trying to get settled on the bike, and the second round's always the one you can try to push on a little bit more. And for sure, Luca Lunetto is going to be wanting to do that this weekend at his home GP.
Yeah, it's a special weekend for Lunetto and the team. Of course, Keeler's on a fantastic lap here. He's going to extend his advantage at the top when he goes across the line. He does by nearly 6/10 of a second, 141.154. Where does that compare to what Keeler's set yesterday? Keeler's fastest lap yesterday was 141.272, so he's already quicker than he went yesterday. This is down at turn 16, the final corner, where plenty of races here at Misano can be won and lost. But yes, going back to Luca Lunetto, a really impressive return to Moto3 last time out over in Barcelona. And he did say that if you'd have told him that he'd be fighting for the top 6 and the potential podium in Barcelona around about a month ago, he'd have laughed you out of the room. Absolutely would not have believed that. But Lunetto is exactly what he was doing. He's got to go through Q1, as you mentioned, Kiko. The first time he's got to do that since Le Mans. And Le Mans tests the day after the French GP is where he found that setup feeling that he liked, regained the confidence that he had in his rookie season on that front end, Lunetto. And then, of course, he picked up that fractured leg over in Assen. But yes, confident I am anyway, and I think Lunetto and the team will be as well, that he'll be in that top 4 in Q1 and in the pole position fight later on this afternoon.
100%. Just looking at Carpe and Piqueras. Carpe doing very well here to be tracking Angel Piqueras, last year's Grand Prix winner here at Misano. Carpe getting a little bit of a reference point and making up for lost time yesterday. And you can see just in the back of shot, when we get a bit of a wider shot, you will be able to see Rueda and David Munoz as well together. Keeler's right out onto the blue as he comes through the final corner. This is very encouraging for Max Keeler to start Saturday morning at 41.1. In the end, Almanza goes top there on a 41 flat, so David Almanza lives up to his expectations and reputation of Friday to go P1 after the first 10 minutes. Coming through the fast right-handers at the end of the lap, working our way down towards Curva del Caro. Piqueras has put a little bit of distance between himself and Carpe, but behind is Jose Antonio Rueda, who is looking to go to top spot. I remind you, this is a purely academic session. It has no bearing really on qualifying unless you have a problem or a crash, which can really upset your Saturday rhythm. But this session is more what you see is what you get. It doesn't have any kind of influence later on when we go green for qualifying at 12:50 local time. Rueda's gone top, Munoz gone second. Munoz looks like he's about to have a scrap with Rueda here, coming through the first couple of corners. Munoz there, right every lap as if it's the last lap. And one of those riders you'd much rather have ahead of you, I think, than behind you, even in FP2. He backed it in down towards turn 4, but this is a fast group of riders here. This could easily be with front 4 fights, and they're out on Sunday, pending Alvaro Carpe moving through out of Q1.
Yeah, absolutely. 2 more riders then into the 140s. Rueda topping the session on a 140.907, and we've just seen, of course, Munoz shadowing the 99, as he has done a lot this season, as most of the riders have done this season. To be honest, Rueda has been such a dominant force, of course. But 2 more riders then, picking up speed. Plenty of grip out there and plenty of speed out there for these Moto3 riders, which bodes well for the rest of the classes in Moto2 and, of course, in MotoGP, where Fermin Aldeguer will be, of course, doing his thing on that Gresini Ducati. Just looking down the timesheets for Sato, had a good DSA. He said he felt strong, and I do want to mention Angel Piqueras as well, because after he passed the load of victory,
Munoz just parks it and moves through on Angel Piqueras, and these two, Rueda and Munoz, have battled their way to the front of this group. So this group has just got a little bit quicker, I feel, and Munoz was not allowing Jose Antonio Maeda to come through. They do carry on.
Now we'll come back to Vaqueras. Pironi mentioned yesterday that he made a plan of trying to follow Rueda for a lot of FP1, or at least some of it anyway, and he said he learned quite a lot from Rueda, how he was managing the tyres, how he was attacking certain areas of Misano. Pironi hasn't ridden a Moto3 bike around Misano because, as we've mentioned multiple times this year, he hasn't raced a fully fledged Moto3 machine because he wasn't in Junior GPs, was in the European Talent Cup and Red Bull Rookie. So Pironi following Moreda, I mean, no better rider really to follow around this season, Moreda. I'm not sure why we're looking at Jorge Martin with such vigour. He's still trying to get comfortable, of course, on that Aprilia, but let's try and get back to the Moto3 action. Here we go. This is Pironi on your screens. He had a good day yesterday, did Valentin Pironi, as we've pretty much said the last however many races. He's a rookie that's really found his rhythm in Moto3, and speaking of finding your rhythm in Moto3, Maximo Quiles just behind there, getting out of shape on the exit. I do want to mention something about Quiles yesterday, Keeper. Can you guess how many valid lap times he set out of a possible 16 flying laps yesterday in practice?
7.
5. So Quiles, as we know, likes to flirt with track limits in practice. I mean, if you're going to do it in any session, really, I mean, make it in the practice sessions. That's what practice is about, finding your limits, testing where you can and can't go. He did, of course, get a lap time in. Good enough for automatic Q2 promotion in P6 yesterday, Quiles, but there's quite a little bit of a pattern appearing in Moto3, seeing Quiles not setting too many valid lap times, but it doesn't affect him too much, of course, from qualifying on Sunday, but just something, a little something to watch out for.
Coming through the opening park chicane, Vaqueras moved up to P2 right behind David Munoz. And then it is Rueda Almanza flashing through shot. This is Fernandez, who's got Nicola Carrara right behind him. They are 8th and 10th at the moment on your timing tower on the left-hand side of the screen. Come through Cavone flat out on one of these Moto3 bikes. It's flat out all the way through this stuff, all the way until we get to turn 13 here. Back down a few gears, run it out to the curb, and then drop it down into turn 14. One of the last overtaken places on this track. It is possible in the final couple of corners. It would have to be a heck of a lunge though, particularly if you're a little bit far back through 15. But turn 16, not out of the books. Where is Max Quiles going? Where is he going there? This is good, but not sure this is actually going to be cancelled because he lost time in that third sector. Oh, dearie me. He is absolutely sideways everywhere. There are going to be people adjusting their television sets at home, trying to work out why the picture's gone wonky. It hasn't. It's just Max Quiles doing his thing, and he's moved up to 5th place, but he's definitely trying on Saturday morning. Now, last time we saw Max Quiles doing these kind of shapes, it didn't end up very well, because he crashed twice in Barcelona, made a Horlicks at turn 1 in the race itself, and finished back down in 12th place. So, Max Quiles, don't override at the moment. You have had a stellar season from the rounds you participated in, mainly due to the age limit restrictions at the start of this season. Quiles riding it like he stole it, and that is why we love him up here in commentary. We had just a quick look there at Tayo Furusato, who's completing your top 10 at the moment, and on a personal best, and his fellow countryman, Ryusei Yamanaka, much neater than Max Quiles coming through the final corner. Yamanaka going for the lines, trying to improve time and place, moves up to 15th and sets his personal best lap of the session. A 41.8 though, that's still some way off what Munoz's been able to do so far today, a 40.7, Elliot, and that is going some round here.
Certainly is. Furusato then over the line improves his time to a 141.393. Furusato finished 7th yesterday, and as I mentioned a few minutes ago, he was feeling really confident. He picked up a pole position here last year, of course, finished 4th in one of the races in the San Marino Grand Prix, and then just lost out in the latter stages at the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix, Tayo Furusato. But after his Barcelona podium, he's feeling very confident again this weekend, and of course for Yamanaka and Furusato, a big weekend coming up in a couple of weeks' time when we head over to the Mobility Resort Motegi in Japan. Very excited for that, and I can't quite believe that we're already heading on to the flyaway so soon as we then pick up David Munoz shadowing still Jose Antonio Rueda. Munoz did say yesterday he's happy with the feeling he's got, but just need to work on some small details. And as I mentioned with Peroni, following Jose Antonio Rueda, who was pretty confident yesterday, just didn't quite hook up that fast lap, he said, in the time attack. He's certainly not a bad rider to follow, and Munoz is not letting him get away.
Munoz is right on the shirt tails here. Opposed Antonio Rueda. There is a dive bomb incoming any moment now, for sure. David Munoz does not ride that close to people if he doesn't want to make a pass on them, although he could do worse than follow Rueda coming through this Misano circuit. Rueda a bit of a specialist after yesterday, right up there. And safely through into Q2, as is David Munoz. This is Joel Kelso, top 3 job yesterday, and a solid job it was in third. He was second in the morning session for Kelso, liking it round here at Misano. Comes across the line, doesn't improve his lap time, but right behind him it's Cormac Buchanan, who moves up to 14th on a 141.6. Now Cormac Buchanan in Barcelona did have a bit of a wretched weekend, it's got to be said. He was really out of sorts. But that 41.7, half a second quicker than what he managed yesterday afternoon. So Buchanan's feeling starting to come good.
Yeah, absolutely. Buchanan said yesterday that he is now getting his confidence back, and it was one of the best days he's had on the bike in a while. After that Bruno crash, he did lose a lot of confidence, and yeah, he's just lost his way slightly in the last couple of rounds, but he did say yesterday that Friday starting to feel like the Buchanan of old, like sort of in the first part of the season where we were really impressed with all the rookies, and including the likes of Buchanan and Rouchet Moodley, and just up ahead of him on track is Joel Kelso. We'll come back to Kelso in a moment, because Rueda and potentially Munoz just behind are about to set the fastest laps of the session. Yes, they are. Munoz going slightly quicker than Jose Antonio Rueda ahead of him, and just a little bit of a mistake going into turn 1, but a good stint there for the 64 following the 99.
And I've got to say, Munoz's corner entry speed was very impressive coming through turn 16. He looked like if he wanted to, he could have made the pass. And also down here in towards turn 1, he just gets caught out as Rueda comes across and has to pick up close between Munoz and Rueda then.
Yeah, probably looks more comfortable from
The commentary position.
yeah, Rueda went like looking at that back, but I'm sure Munoz was pretty much all in control. What's going on here then? That is Valentin Peroni potentially getting stuck at turn 14, the tight right-hander, of course, at the end of the 11, 12, 13 sequence here at Misano. That's very close coming into the final corner. Two very exciting rookies on track together.
I'm not sure he was getting stuck. I think he was looking for a way around the outside, because Keyleth has been leading Peroni over the last couple of laps. We have a yellow flag in sector 1. That'll be round turns 1 and 2. I think we saw the yellow flag. Oh, Cormac Buchanan has gone down. It's a bit of praise we've said a couple of times. Too many in 2025. But the rookie New Zealander works his way back onto his wheels, and that looks like that's coming through the opening couple of corners. Indeed it is. So turn 2, it looks like Buchanan's gone down. He's all scuffed up on the left-hand side, and he's going to go through the shot in the background. Oh, he's lucky that didn't pick up and spit him out the front door, but holds it in, keeps a clutch in, and that's Railway Motorsport machine continues on its way one more time.
Yeah, unfortunately, perhaps then for Buchanan, just looked like the rear end stepped around on him when he tipped it into turn 2, which is where Rueda is now. Rueda followed by Piqueras, followed by Pini, a very quick trio there on the circuit. So Rueda then has, well, he's lost the shackles, broken the shackles that David Munoz tagged himself onto on the rear end of that KTM, but this is a really strong session for Munoz, for Rueda and for Piqueras, who I did mention had a little bit of a quiet day on Friday. Did expect Piqueras to really come into this weekend and be in and around that top 3 right from the get-go, but that's not really how it played out. Finished in P12, of course, in practice, so was sweating a little bit more than he would have liked, and the team would have liked as well to get into that Q2, but unlike Barcelona, he is straight into Q2, and this is a good session for Piqueras. Of course, a race winner here after a double long lap penalty on the Leopard Honda at the San Marino Grand Prix, and then finished on the podium at the Emilia Romagna Grand Prix a couple of weeks later, as they just get out, well, Ricky Rossi gets out of the way at the fastest part of the circuit.
Guido Pini just going to the grandstand in the back of shot there. So Guido Pini's down in 19th at the moment, not having a Saturday morning to remember at all. My sharp intake of breath was the fact that Jose Antonio Rueda was actually trying to get a bit of slipstream from Ricardo Rossi there. It just looked like Rossi was probably not on his fastest lap of the weekend at all. He was well out of it. Rossi down in 23rd place at the moment. So that's a bit of a problem with the number 54 on the Riva called Snipers team Honda. Across the line, Rueda does improve his lap time. Piqueras does but stays third. I've got to say, that is a very interesting top six. Munoz, Rueda, Piqueras, Quiles, Kelso and Almanza. Almanza probably should be a little bit further up. But those are your 5 or 6 riders this weekend that just look like they have got a little bit more pace, and it's a shame that for once Almanza is not taken onto the back of Jose Antonio Rueda, because we could have really done with seeing has he got the pace to stick with him, because they're obviously out there doing race runs at the moment and seeing what the feeling they've got. Of course, we go green on Sunday at 11 o'clock, so a little bit later than what we're at now, but still, you want to be seeing if you've got the measure of the rivals. I'm fairly sure that Almanza's confident in that anyway. He's always good over one lap, so he's going to put himself in a position, hopefully, come qualifying. So we get a wonderful drone shot. This is up towards turn 9 and 10, Tramonto. And then it's down the back straight and through the flat-out right-hander of Corone. Rueda on another improving lap here. I think he's so close. This will be one to digest the chronological analysis after this one. Through turn 11 they go. Rueda's absolutely flying through there. Piqueras has just got enough space to build into and run his own lines. He's not going to be that close up behind Rueda where he's getting caught out. But Piqueras was so quick through that third sector, so that is something to really make a note of coming into Sunday. It looked like Munoz was super fast coming into turn 15 and 16. This lap is going to go for Piqueras, but nonetheless, sector 3 was absolutely lightning quick, and he has latched right onto the back of Jose Antonio Rueda. What would the lap time have been? It would have been a 40.6. It would have moved him up, but that lap has gone away from him, and he bails out to the next one. So just under 6 minutes to go. Let's give you a rundown of your top 10. Munoz, Rueda, Piqueras, Quiles, Kelso, Almanza. Valentin Peroni next up in 7th. Foggia showing well in 8th, and the next in 9th. Nacho Fernandez there in 10th. But as we get a slow-mo of Jose Antonio Rueda coming through the final corner, lurking in the background, the number 64 comes into view, and the 36 just behind. And they are really your 3 riders that you've got to imagine are going to be riders to beat. So let's have a little further look down the order. It's outside the top 10. What we got? Carpe down there in 13th place. We've got Furusato 1 place higher up. Buchanan 16th now. Eddie O'Shea has just bumped his way up to 18th place. Peeny's down in 21st, 1 place behind Jacob Ralston. And then Evan Belford on East Grand Prix Davy there in 23rd place. A respectable ride there. Less than 2 seconds off David Munoz's top time. Ralston just moves up into 14th place. I think he's just behind Max Quiles. Quiles there in P4 at the moment, giving chase. I think that is to Harvey Aditama out there on track as we get a couple of lines coming out pit lane. It's Uriarte and Almanza. But Harvey Aditama is going to find himself under the attack of Max Quiles coming through turns 5 and 6. We'll never know the outcome of that, but this is Dennis Foggia here at home, less than 5 minutes to go through the final corner, and Foggia really looking to see if he can make it work after his worst result of the season last time out. Across the line, P9 up to P4 and a quarter of a second or so off Munoz. So some Saturday morning happiness coming the way of the 71. Yeah, certainly 1 top 10 in his last 5 results for Dennis Foggia. Doesn't really cut the mustard, unfortunately, for the Italian nor the Aspar team. A 3-time winner around here in Moto 3 in 2021 and 2022, and said yesterday that they tried something in the afternoon that didn't work quite well at first, but they able to fix that quickly, and he is going straight into Q2, which makes your life a hell of a lot easier, and that's something Scott Ogden is also doing after the British rider finished in P14. Yes, they just squeezed through after he went through Q1 in the last couple of rounds over, of course, in Barcelona, and just before that as well in Hungary. Sorry, getting my rounds mixed up. But Ogden then into the top 10 as things stand, as Quiles comes over the line to complete another lap time. This is a very decent run of things for Quiles, and it was nice to see the top 2 in the championship, Rueda and Piqueras, lapping together as well. In terms of the championship, feels like a
I mean, every weekend for Piqueras really is a massive weekend. He has got to continue to take points off Rueda, but this weekend, with how last year went, here at Misano was for Piqueras. Looked good, was pinpointed this weekend as a track that he feels really strong at as well. This has to be a weekend where Piqueras takes more points off the 99 as they lap together again. This time though, Rueda just behind 36.
And that's an interesting point because for most of this session, Piqueras has been able to have a look at where Jose Antonio Rueda is strong, and now Rueda gets a sneak peek at Piqueras' strengths around here at Misano. So, not bad at all from those two, getting a look, and perhaps that is a dress rehearsal of things to come. Scott Ogden riding the edge of the curve and just dipping onto the green with the CIP Green Barrett KTM is just moving to the line, the number 19, not on an improved lap. And this time, 3 seconds off, so a lot of time lost in that final sector. But Scott Ogden is going to get another he'll get another lap after this one as well. So he's got 2 laps remaining of his run. As we take a look back through the field, this is Foggia chasing Luca Lunetta. Lunetta 9th. We've got half a second covering the top 10. It is mighty close this morning.
Yeah, it certainly is. We've seen that all weekend really across every class. It was close in MotoGP, of course, as well on Friday, but a good session for both of these Italians, who will of course be hoping to at least challenge for the podium, and if not, stand on the podium. Letta picked up his first front row start here last year in his very impressive rookie campaign on the 58. Foggia just shadowed a move up the inside at turn 12, a very fast corner to try and make a move, thinks better of it and loses a little bit of time there, but this is good stuff from Foggia. As you mentioned, has just gone off the boils slightly. We thought after his Mugello podium, that could be the spark that really lights Foggia into life in 2025, but it's just not quite worked out that way, and that's Piqueras who ran wide in the final corner. As we get yellow flags out in sector 1, the letter improves up to P6. Good stuff.
That might have just been a small trip through the gravel because the other flags are immediately in. 30 seconds on the FP2 Moto 3 stopwatch until we get the first checkered flag here on Sprint Saturday. We're picking up David Almanza working down towards turn 8. Almanza's on a lap time. Not that I can see. That's why we're having a look at him, because he's had a crash. So that was down in the opening sector. That's his second crash of the weekend. So David Almanza, fastest on Friday, but has fallen. That looks down at turn 4 to me. And indeed it is. Well, it's coming through turn 5 now, but I think he's fallen on the exit of turn 4. And then works his way back around. So not the end to the session that David Almanza would have liked, because David Munoz goes top that 1:4, remains top at 1:40.587. That is your fastest lap time of the week, and it's just a few thousandths quicker than what Almanza was able to do yesterday. David Munoz, but very, very comfortable out there on that number 64 Nick Romoli Dynamo Intact GP KTM.
Certainly does, and after the disappointing P8 that he endured over in Barcelona, just lost out in the latter stages. He didn't really, he said, feel comfortable at all weekend in Barcelona, and that sort of signified why Munoz didn't properly put together a push for at least a race victory in the latter stage. Now, Joan Fernandez, a little bit of a quieter session for the P2 finisher from yesterday, but it's going to jump him up the leaderboard. Yes, it is, up into P6 on his final lap time, so another rider within 4/10 of Jose Antonio Rueda and David Munoz at the top of the standings. Rueda then completes a fine session for the 99.
Indeed, and Rueda has been losing time in the second half of this lap, right the way through this session. He's been very fast in the opening 2 sectors, but not the closing 2 sectors. So Rueda maybe just needing to find a little bit of work now. That has been through the gravel, at least, for David Munoz. Has he stacked it? Being 20.6 seconds off in his second sector, one would hazard a guess that it's been at least through the gravel, judging by the dust on his tyres. So David Munoz, just as I said, he was looking comfortable. Let's have a look and see what happened. This is going down in towards turn 8 at Birch Corner, gets it all crossed up on the curbs and does bail out and goes all the way through the gravel. Nicely saved though for the 64, runs it out to the grass. And he'll work his way back on the track from there. But that last lap, obviously, going nowhere. It is Munoz, Rueda and Piqueras, your top 3, ahead of Foggia and Kilos. Fernandez, as we said, moving up into P6 late on. Linetto finds himself down in Q1, is 7th. Kelso, Almanzo, who was the late crasher, and Scott Ogden completing your top 10, just off of the leaderboards, just off of the top 10. A quick mention to Eddie O'Shea, 17th. That's one of his better sessions in Moto3. There have been a lot of changes in that Grid M Lab team, so the changes, at least, are now taking effect, it would seem.
Yeah, O'Shea feeling confident again on the machine. He's equal best Friday yesterday in P17, and he'll be pretty confident of challenging for that top 4 in Q1. He's also running a special helmet this weekend to remember his late nan. So if you go to Eddie's social media page, you can see that very lovely tribute helmet that he's sporting this weekend here in Misano. But a second off in FP2, a decent job done for sure, and also for Evan Belford as well, the debutant this weekend on the other side of the garage, only 1.4 seconds off. And P23 ahead of the likes of Ricardo Rossi, a much more experienced rider in this class, of course, as well. So top stuff, it had to be said, from the 52 of Evan Belford. Good job done.
And what are we going to see here? This is Foggia, last flying lap over at Tremonto, bailed out of it, and Luca Lanetta is not quite sure what's going on there. So it was a bit of sarcasm maybe going on.
Thumb up between the Italians, wasn't it? But yeah, maybe a little bit of sarcasm. Like, yeah.
Yeah,
Good job, Dennis. Whether that be a genuine good job or good job as in what do you do?
Yeah, maybe the latter. David Munoz, 40.587, sees him set the fastest lap time of the weekend in Moto 3, ahead of Rueda and Piqueras. It is a Spanish 1-2-3. Foggia there in 4th place. We just saw a last glimpse of him coming through Tremonto. Quiles, his teammate, the Aspar riders, 4th and 5th. Outside the top 10, Valentin Peroni just ahead of Risa Yamanaka in front of countryman time for Ritato. Carpe, a quieter session than yesterday, 14th for him ahead of Jacob Ralston. And then on the final page, Guido Pini finding himself down in 20th. That's not very encouraging going into the rest of the weekend. And Marcos Ruda completing the order in 27. Munoz is fastest here in Moto, and then works his way back around. So not the end to the session that David Almanza would have liked, because David Munoz goes top that 1-4, remains top at 140.587. That is your fastest lap time of the weekend. It's just a few thousandths quicker than what Almanza was able to do yesterday. David Munoz, but very, very comfortable out there on that number 64. Nick Romoli, Dynamo Intec GP KTM.
Certainly does, and after the disappointing P8 that he endured over in Barcelona, just lost out in the latter stages. He didn't really, he said, feel comfortable at all weekend in Barcelona, and that sort of signified why Munoz didn't properly put together a push for at least a race victory in the latter stage. Now, Joan Fernandez, a little bit of a quieter session for the P2 finisher from yesterday, but it's going to jump him up the leaderboard. Yes, it is, up into P6 on his final lap time, so another rider within 4/10 of Jose Antonio Rueda and David Munoz at the top of the standings. Rueda then completes a fine session for 99.
Indeed, and Rueda has been losing time in the second half of this lap, right the way through this session. He's been very fast in the opening 2 sectors, but not the closing 2 sectors. So Rueda maybe just needing to find a little bit of work now. That has been through the gravel, at least, for David Munoz. Has he stacked it? Being 20.6 seconds off in his second sector, one would hazard a guess that it's been at least through the gravel, judging by the dust on his tyres. So David Munoz, just as I said, he was looking comfortable. Let's have a look and see what happened. This is going down in towards turn 8 at Birch Corner, gets it all crossed up on the curbs and does bail out and goes all the way through the gravel. Nicely saved though for the 64, runs it out to the grass. And he'll work his way back on the track from there. But that last lap, obviously, going nowhere. It is Munoz, Rueda and Piqueras, your top 3, ahead of Foggia and Quiles. Fernandez, as we said, moving up into P6 late on. Linetto finds himself down in Q1, is 7th. Kelso, Almanzo, who was the late crasher, and Scott Ogden completing your top 10, just off of the leaderboards, just off of the top 10. A quick mention to Eddie O'Shea, 17th. That's one of his better sessions in Moto3. There have been a lot of changes in that Grid M Lab team, so the changes, at least, are now taking effect, it would seem.
Yeah, O'Shea feeling confident again on the machine. He's equal best Friday yesterday in P17, and he'll be pretty confident of challenging for that top 4 in Q1. He's also running a special helmet this weekend to remember his late nan. So if you go to Eddie's social media page, you can see that very lovely tribute helmet that he's sporting this weekend here in Misano. But a second off in FP2, a decent job done for sure, and also for Evan Belford as well, the debutant this weekend on the other side of the garage, only 1.4 seconds off. And P23 ahead of the likes of Ricardo Rossi, a much more experienced rider in this class, of course, as well. So top stuff, it had to be said, from the 52 of Evan Belford. Good job done.
And what are we going to see here? This is Foggia, last flying lap over at Tremonto, bailed out of it, and Luca Lanetta is not quite sure what's going on there. So it's a bit of sarcasm maybe going on.
Thumb up between the Italians, wasn't it? But yeah, maybe a little bit of sarcasm. Like, yeah.
Yeah,
Good job, Dennis. Whether that be a genuine good job or good job as in what do you do?
Yeah, maybe the latter. David Munoz, 40.587, sees him set the fastest lap time of the weekend in Moto 3, ahead of Rueda and Piqueras. It is a Spanish 1-2-3. Foggia there in 4th place. We just saw a last glimpse of him coming through Tremonto. Quiles, his teammate, the Aspar riders, 4th and 5th. Outside the top 10, Valentin Peroni just ahead of Risa Yamanaka in front of countryman time for Ritato. Carpe, a quieter session than yesterday. 14th for him ahead of Jacob Ralston. And then on the final page, Guido Pini finding himself down in 20th. That's not very encouraging going into the rest of the weekend. And Marcos Ruda completing the order in 27. Munoz is fastest here in Moto 3 ahead of qualifying. Myself, Kika, Giles and Elliot York. We're out of here. Lewis Sotheby and Neil Morrison are moving in. Moto 2 up next. Enjoy.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to Misano. What a beautiful Misano morning this is. So much home expectation, as always, when we come to the Adriatic coast of Italy. Yeah. Quite a stone's throw, but not far from it, from the VR46 ranch, where so many who are represented in this paddock have cut their teeth over the years. It's one of those who enjoyed the best of our opening day of Moto 2 action yesterday. Celestino Vietti, certainly off to a flyer on home soil yesterday. 1:34.650 for him, a new all-time lap record of this Misano circuit on a Moto 2 bike. There is your confirmation as he led the World Championship leader, Manu Gonzalez. Danny Holgado, the in-form 27, winner last weekend, and top point scorer in the last 5 Grand Prix now in Moto 2. Third from Jake Dixon, who's looking right back on the pace once again. Diogo Moreira, 5th, and he's going to be a real threat as we go through the day. Albert Arenas, 6th for Grassini, of course, a home Grand Prix for them. Zonta van den Goldberg, Ethan Guevara, Senna Agius, and Barry Baltus inside the top 10. The Q2 qualifiers, as of right, completed by Alonso Lopez and Philip Salach on their respective Boscoscuros. David Alonso for the Aspar squad, and Adrian Huertas for the home-based Ital Trans squad, which means the most illustrious name, and certainly the most surprising name, in qualifying one later on this afternoon, second in the World Championship, Aaron Kinnett, who does arrive here in a little bit of pain, it's fair to say, after his Sunday spill at Montmello. He's got 15 minutes extra work ahead of him if he wants to start anywhere near the front of the grid here this weekend. He goes to qualifying one. Perhaps the biggest names that are joining him, the American racing duo of Marcos Ramirez and Joe Roberts. Tony Arbolino, after a fuel pump problem at the start of practice yesterday, limited his mileage. And certainly on recent form, Colin Vire, a surprise to see him in qualifying one. Although he did lose essentially the entirety of FP1 after an early crash at turn 12. So it's Lewis Sotheby and Neil Morrison as always with you for Moto2 FP2. We'll of course be back with you later on for qualifying as well. We come into this Super Saturday, Neil, with certainly off the form we see so far a clear favourite at the front of the field, although qualifying hasn't always been Celestino Vietti's strongest suit in Moto2. Hasn't had a pole position since Austria last season, but Vietti certainly catching the eye on day one. Yes, he most certainly was. He's come to call this track his own in recent times. Victor here in the second race that we had last year. He can always be called upon for a decent showing in front of his home fans, and yesterday he was looking very, very strong indeed. Great to see so many fans through the turnstiles at this early stage of the Saturday morning. We're just approaching 9:20 local time. And you have to imagine the grandstands around this Misano World Circuit will be filling up at the prospect of potential Italian victory in the Tissot Sprint coming up, as well as potentially two home victors in the two Moto E races that we have here this year, the penultimate Moto E round of the season as well. As always on a Saturday, it is action-packed from the start of the day right until the end. And Vietti will certainly be looking for a really strong qualifying position, because yesterday afternoon, we'll come on to this a little bit once the session gets underway, but Vietti, I think we could say head and shoulders above the rest of the field in terms of rhythm. Certainly looks the strongest. And yeah, at this early stage of the weekend, you'd have to say he is the favourite. However, you can never rule out this man, can you, Lewis? Mario Gonzalez, who leads the World Championship now by 38 points. Might not have reached the podium in Barcelona, but boy, was it a big day in his World Championship Challenge. Aaron Cadet crashed and Diogo Moreira took along that penalty on a day when he was already struggling to only score 2 points himself. Gonzalez see this as a real opportunity to potentially extend his lead still further, and maybe he won't be too bothered if Vietti runs up and dominates at the front of the field, as long as he's finishing right behind him. Here's another rider who will certainly feature in the podium battle this weekend, certainly from the evidence of yesterday. He's super chilled, and well he might be. Danny Holgado, winner by a distance. The actual winning margin on the results websites don't quite do justice to how far ahead he was. He was celebrating 3 corners before he reached the checkered flag. And it has to be said that his rhythm yesterday would put him in that podium conversation. There appears to be a fairly decent group up behind Celestino Vietti on overall rhythm. Yeah, there certainly does. Quite a few names in the fight for the possible podium at this early stage. Guevara had a decent day. He was 8th fastest at the end of Friday afternoon. Coming here in some good form as well is the former Moto 3 World Champion. He's been in the top 9 in 4 of the last 5 races. It was a good day yesterday for this rider too. Senna Agius was looking fairly strong and consistent. He was 9th at the end of play and practice, and he was very consistent during his first run of the afternoon session. Was getting faster as well as his run progressed, which is always a good sign. And Agius behind Vietti maybe has one of the stronger rhythms as well in that podium fight that Lewis was talking about. He'll be looking to qualify well and then keep his nose clean tomorrow. It's been a couple of disappointing results for Senna. They haven't quite gone to plan. He hasn't quite managed to show his full potential over the last few weeks. He'll be hoping to change that recent routine come Sunday. Yeah, we're of course talking up his chances this time last weekend, only for it to go wrong on the Sunday, so Senna won't be counting his chickens just yet. Well, Boscascora had a really good day yesterday. 5 of them inside the top 12, 3 in the top 8. We've seen 2 of them already in Celestino Vietti and Ethan Guevara, and there was the last of them. The last of them that we've shown you, because he was the second Boscascora yesterday. 4th overall for Jake Dixon. And in fairness to Jake, he felt that the main improvements that he has to make over the course of the weekend, if he is to truly get in that battle for pole position, are really from himself rather than the bike. Of course, did have a minor tip-off at the final corner partway through yesterday afternoon's crucial practice session, but that didn't delay him too much.
Yeah, it certainly didn't. He was just delighted to have picked up where he left off in Barcelona, to have the same feeling of comfort aboard his bike from the first laps of FP1. I think that put Jake really at ease for the rest of the day. It was a strong day for him. Not such a strong day in terms of result for David Alonso. He was 13th, but really enjoyed himself out there during practice. He said that basically he was following his own line. He wasn't trying to get references of other riders, following people per se. He was just trying to get on with his own business. And he may have been slow, so to speak, in comparison to some of the faster names, but he felt that's probably the most effective way to get up to speed over a weekend. Expect to see big improvements from him in this session. And expect to see a few improvements from Diogo Moreira as well. 5th place at the end of play for the Championship Challenger. So Moreira, after a really disappointing outing in Barcelona, needs to bounce back here.
As always, on a Friday, when we take a look at Diogo Moreira's general rhythm, he appears to be 2-3 tenths maybe off the outright fastest, but generally just closes up once he gets his game face on and focuses on the important sessions of the weekend. So once pole positions, grid positions, and points are up for grabs, Moreira takes a step forward. Colin Vile will be looking to do the same today. You saw wearing some scars from his travails yesterday. Fast old crash for Colin in free practice 1. Didn't set a time in the end because he went down on his very first time lap down at turn 12. And always kind of had the feeling that Vire was playing catch up from that point on in the day. He can only get himself ultimately up into 26th place in the afternoon, and he'll be kept company in qualifying 1 by this map.
Yeah, the big surprise of yesterday, Aaron Canet down outside the top 14, 15th for him. And it was another complicated day, a day when he wasn't quite showing his best. Big pressure will be falling on his shoulders when Q1 rolls around this afternoon. Navarro had a solid Friday as well. Second on order, Navarro was 23rd at the end of play on his Clint Ford factory racing bike.
Oh, only 1.1 seconds. The average fastest lap time just did everything.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the top 23 covered by 1.1 seconds yesterday. I mean, Moto 2 pretty much from the first race of the year in Thailand. When we look through the practice sessions, has been ludicrously close, ludicrously tight, and yesterday was absolutely no exception. Expect that to continue here today. Quite a few names then that they're going to be using this free practice 2 session for a little bit of a test bed for another longer run. Quite a few, majority of the riders were using the first part of practice to try out some race settings. And I think we're going to see that again in this free practice 2 session as we get underway. Our commentary box just situated as they leave the pit lane. So you might hear a bit of background noise as the bikes all come rushing past us. We've got that on one side, we've got the fan zone on the other, which is blasting AC/DC currently. It's quite difficult to hear ourselves thinking here, Lewis, but
10 feet behind us is that, so yeah, popping my head up and down while Neil Morrison has been getting us underway with this session. Looking to call the tune out on the racetrack is Manny Gonzalez here this morning. It's amazing to think of Manny Gonzalez and his recent run. Because that victory in Mugello is his only victory since Le Mans, which was some 10 Grand Prix ago. But he's doing what world champions do ultimately. Of course, it's no guarantee that he's going to take the world championship end of the season, but he's certainly our favourite at the moment. But the best thing you can do as a world champion, or if you want to become one, is to maximise your days when you're not the outright fastest. And I can certainly say that on many recent occasions, Manny Gonzalez has done that. 4th was as good as it was going to get for him in Barcelona, given where he'd started from. The top 3 had already been able to break clear of the field by the time Gonzalez got involved in that battle with Istvan Guevara. Of course, in Brno 2, didn't have the pace of Joe Roberts and Barry Baltus, so brought it home in a very safe 3rd place. Assen, perhaps a slightly different scenario, because he thought he had the pace to win the Grand Prix, clearly didn't. after some early rear grip problems. But again, just made sure he brought the bike home. If you're not going to win the Grand Prix, try and finish on the podium. If not, finish as close to it as possible. And as a result of that, Gonzalez has been able to extend that points lead out. Whatever happens this weekend, Gonzalez will return to the scene of his first Grand Prix victory. The Mobility Resort will take in a couple of weeks' time as World Championship leader.
Okay, will it be achieved in similar random circumstances? It was one of the stranger races in Moto 2 last year. Moto 2 in recent times, in actual fact, there's well, light drizzle. Well, it was heavier than light drizzle, wasn't it? Spec up the grid just before the race start. Everyone, well, almost everyone, decided to go for wets. A few brave ones decided to pit and change the slicks or just go out on slicks. And yeah, it ended up playing into the hands of Manny Gonzalez, who went on to win his first ever Grand Prix, the first of many as it turned out. Going back to Motegi as the championship leader this year. No matter what happens this weekend, he will go to Japan in 2 weeks' time, leading Aaron Canet and Gilbert Moreira. Let's see if he can continue that recent trend of just gradually increasing his championship lead as he has done for the past 5 races now.
Yeah, he's been keeping the likes of Canet and Moreira very much at arm's length. Still an awful long way to go in this season for Gonzalez to see this one over the line. Let's get underway with this free practice 2 section. Above the field, of course, here in Moto 2 here this weekend with a couple of wild cards added to the normal cast of characters. And both of them had mixed days yesterday, it's fair to say. We have Alberto Ferrandez on a 9th Boscoscuro on track this weekend. Essentially, he's a teammate to Vietti and Lopez at Speed RS team. Ferrandez on the 93 did have a crash yesterday afternoon in practice, which is part of the reason why he's down in 28th place in his fellow wildcard. And rival from the European Moto 2 Championship, Alberto Sorrell, well, he also went down his crash in free practice 1 yesterday morning. He was 29th at the end of running yesterday, so we'll see both of those in qualifying 1 later on. Of course, we do see a couple of names on your time screen that you're not too familiar with.
And just dipping into some of the times that we saw yesterday in practice to give you a bit of an overview of how the grid looks to be set at this early stage of the weekend in terms of rhythm. I was looking at the first run or runs in practice, which gave a bit of an indication. Some riders were doing longer runs around 9-10 laps, and some were doing 2 separate runs. But looking at those that were able to lap in those longer runs in the 1 minute 34s or lower the 1 minute 35.5, I think that was an indication of just who had the very quickest pace. I mean, Jake Dixon was able to do 2 laps in that kind of bracket. Manny Gonzalez, Aaron Canet were able to do 3. Senna Aegis was able to do 4, but standing well along of the rest was Celestino Vietti, who was able to do 8. And in particular, I think he had a 4-lap run where he was doing 1 minute 35.1s. Pretty advanced stage of one of those runs, which indicated to me that he was very, very well set up for Sunday, even if it was just a Friday afternoon.
Yeah, Manny Gonzalez, by contrast, his runs were generally averaging around a 1:35.4, 35.5. Dixon was doing 35.4s, 35.5s, although we did see him get down to 35.0 at one point in his run. Moreira, as I sort of alluded to months ago, he was more in the high 35s, but I don't think we should necessarily be concerned from his point of view by that, as generally the way Diogo Moreira does things, he then makes that step forward in the race. Senna Aegis was also doing mid to low 35s, doing 35.2s, 35.4s at the end of his run. I think that's one key thing, a pattern that was sort of translated across every rider's long run yesterday, is that they were doing similar sort of lap times at the end of the run as they were at the beginning. We're not going to see the same kind of drop-off in performance that we saw a week ago in Barcelona, which was a much more punishing circuit on tyres, much more abrasive, much lower grip levels. The riders, particularly MotoGP, were absolutely waxing lyrical yesterday about how grippy this Misano World Circuit Marco Simoncelli is. Pirelli have, as a result of that, gone more aggressive on the tyre options with the return of the super soft rear tyre, but certainly from what we're seeing and from the lack of drop-off on performance, you'd expect most to go for that super soft rear tyre in the Grand Prix tomorrow. Yeah, I think they most certainly will. I think it was Manu Gonzalez was saying yesterday that he just expects to see no drop off in times, no drop off in performance. So he reckons that they can be running close to fastest rhythm and the fastest pace right towards the end of race distance on Sunday. So it'll be interesting to see. Sometimes that's not always the best for racing when riders can just go absolutely hell for leather and flat out all race long, but that was the case in the Emilia Romagna Grand Prix last year in Moto 2. We had an absolute corker that went right the way down, not even to the final corner, to the run out of the final corner. It was decided there and then, down to the very final metres of the Grand Prix. An agonising one. If you're Aaron Canet or Tony Arbolino, who we saw a moment ago being passed by Regis into turn 2, moved to catch Arbolino slightly by surprise. Important session for Tony this morning, having lost some track time yesterday afternoon in practice. As mentioned before the session got underway, he had a fuel pump problem at the start of the practice session, which saw him pull over on the side of the racetrack moments after leaving the pit lane at the green light. And given that he, of course, wanted to do the bulk of his running on a single tyre at the end of the session, that was why we didn't see him back out on track for quite some time until the closing stages, as we saw the bulk of the riders yesterday putting in around about the 15 to 20 lap mark. Tony Arbolino yesterday only got the 7 laps in, 4 time laps, and that was nowhere near enough for him to make his way into Q2. Yeah, so potentially another tough weekend ahead for Tiger Tony. I haven't seen the best of him a great deal this year, it has to be said. Just saw Adrian Huertas on our screens there. We were talking yesterday about how Huertas is maybe starting to show signs of adapting to this Moto 2 class and understanding exactly what is needed. As we see Jake Dixon jump up the order into 8th, that is Marina Rossi and Patrick Kramer, two of the team managers and coordinators for the Mark VDS squad. A good day overall, wasn't it, for Dixon, who was inside the top 4 in both of yesterday's sessions. I think he was 2nd in FP1, 4th in practice, and all around the track that hasn't always been a great place for Jake in years gone by. But yeah, he was just saying that the feeling that he had rolling out of the box from yesterday morning was pretty much the same one that he had in Barcelona, which carried him to 2nd place, his 4th podium of the year, and he was just feeling pretty comfortable, able to now brake more or less how he wants to, and obviously there's a whole host of heavy brakings on this Misano World Circuit. So Dixon is one to certainly keep an eye on for the podium at least. Not completely out of the championship picture just yet. 5th overall, 65 points back of Manny Gonzalez. If he can win this weekend, then he's still very much in the conversation, isn't he? With still another 6 Grand Prix to go. After this one, we head to the Far East. Champions Grand Prix coming up in a couple of weeks' time, where, remember, Jake Dixon was on pole position last year before the mixed weather conditions took over. Of course, he has had some success with the likes of Mandalika, Phillip Island, of course, a favourite of so many in the Grand Prix calendar. And Sepang Circuit in Malaysia, where perhaps his most recent memories weren't particularly positive, as he lost a podium in the last stages of the Grand Prix a year ago. Dixon at the moment in 10th place in this session, just ahead of his teammate Philip Salat, who understandably was feeling rather sore and rather stiff yesterday after the crash last time we saw him in Barcelona. But despite all of that, it's a notable achievement given how he was feeling physically yesterday for Salat to book his automatic place in Q2. Yeah, absolutely. It was a decent performance from Philip. Described it as probably the worst feeling that he had on any Friday throughout this 2025 season. Close. Aaron Canet down there at turn number 14. David Alonso decided to do his own running yesterday, but he's rather wisely chosen a certain Italian to follow in this session. You have to say it is doing him fairly well so far. 35.1 he's just posted, which is a tenth faster than he managed at any point yesterday. So Alonso running alone yesterday, but looking at what Vietti can do
just there. I just saw Danny Holgado briefly on our screens, and I want to just point out this quite remarkable stat that I have for you. You're going to be so impressed by this, Lewis. I was super impressed when I found out as well. David Alonso won 2 races ago in Hungary. Danny Holgado won last time out in Barcelona. 2 rookies winning back-to-back intermediate class races. When was the last time that happened?
I think I'm going to immediately pass on that one. I couldn't even begin to know where to start.
Quite remarkable. It hasn't happened apparently since the first 2 races of the 1993 250cc season, when Tetsuya Harada won the opening race in Eastern Creek in Australia, and then Nobuatsu Aoki won in Shah Alam next time out in Malaysia, which is quite a remarkable feat. So what we can see is that it's not too often that we have debut intermediate class victors and winning in back-to-back races, which is quite remarkable.
Who knows? Could we see 3 in a row from the rookie pairing? Certainly wouldn't rule it out completely at this stage. Perhaps Holgado looks the more likely at this stage than Alonso, but Alonso is taking those steps forward this morning. He said yesterday, or said over the weekend, that riding on his own was perhaps the best way to ultimately improve and to get to where he wants to get to in Moto2. Just following riders in practice could maybe only get you so far. Ultimately, you're going to have to figure it out for yourself. And certainly Danny Holgado has done that. He's just gone up into 3rd place now, 3rd and 4th for the Aspar duo, and feel they'll be expecting potentially title challenges from each of their riders in 2026.
Yeah, I agree with that. Incidentally, it was just the 5th time since 1993 that we've had 2 different rookies winning races in the intermediate class. We had it in 2007 with Alvaro Bautista and Mickey Kallio, 2 rookies in that season who won races. Then we had it in 2010, Ian Oni and Stefan Bradl. 2011 with Marc Marquez and Michele Pirro. And then 3 years ago, Pedro Acosta and Alonso Lopez. So, yeah, shout out to resident statistician, TV Room Raccoon, for some of those stats. Mind-blowing to see that, yeah, first time rookies have won back-to-back races in intermediate class since 1993.
We have had a stellar rookie class this year in Moto2 with the Aspar duo, with Colin Vietu, who's started to show recently that he might still stand on the podium before the season is out. Ivan Ortola, we've already seen him on the front row of the grid earlier on in the season. Back in Assen, Adrian Huertas, who right on cue appears on screen, showed in Hungary at a track where perhaps he was on more of a level playing field with the rest as a newcomer to Moto2. Then he can also deliver. Of course, we're fully expecting next season to also be introduced to an impressive crop of rookies. The top 2 in the Moto3 World Championship as it stands, expected to move up. One of them already confirmed to move up. Angel Piqueras confirmed yesterday to be moving up with the MSI squad alongside Ivan Ortola next season, but certainly all the smart money is on Jose Antonio Rueda doing the same. Luca Medetta, we now know, is also going to be moving up to Moto2 next season. He's going to be teammates to Celestino Vietti at the Speed RS team on a Boscoscuro 2. So, as always is the case across our Grand Prix classes, it's a constant state of evolution. As riders move up and riders move out to make way for the next generation.
Amazing shot through Cavonia of Manny Gonzalez, getting it so crossed up. Goodness me, that was a huge moment at one of the scariest corners on the entire championship. Well, I would say 70% of that was in control, and then that last bit was just a little bit too close to the edge. You can see there, well over 260 kilometers per hour. And it snaked sideways in 6th gear. It will be a trip back to pit lane and a change of underwear for the Spaniard after that. That was quite remarkable.
There he is, just in the back of the picture after that Cole Brown moment at Chavone. I think he's now explaining to the team just what happened. Unfortunately, no harm done to Manny Gonzalez, and it goes to show, doesn't it? It's on a moment like that where what feels like a really comfortable World Championship League can very easily be closed right down. As we have already seen this season, Aaron Canet have key crashes. We've seen him have crashes in practice sessions that have affected his weekend. Of course, had a crash on the Saturday morning in Austria, and he really wasn't the same again in that Grand Prix weekend, so kind of rolled thought to have a single lap off really when you're fighting for a world championship as Manu is.
Yeah. You made a very good point yesterday, Lewis, that historically, the riders from the VR46 Academy who have ample experience of riding around this Misano World Circuit, Marco Simoncelli, are usually so strong in sector number 3, and that is basically the sector of track that goes from the entry to turn 10, Tremonto, onto the back straight, through Carboni, then through 2 more of those right-handers just before turn number 14. And yesterday, Celestino Vietti was 0.13 seconds faster than anyone else through that sector alone. And when we have, 21 riders covered by 1 second, to have that kind of advantage in that part of the track alone is just, something that really makes him stand out. So Vietti in that third sector making the difference yesterday.
It's a real ace up your sleeve on any lap of the weekend, particularly when you're going for a qualifying lap. But if you think of how that might affect the race tomorrow, one of the big overtaking opportunities is into turn 14, the tight Caro hairpin. 2 corners from the end of the lap. And if Vietti's able to pull out 5-6 bike lanes through the right-handers that precede that, he's not going to be under any kind of threat in those corners, and potentially, if he has to attack anyone into those corners, he's going to get a huge run on them through that part of the lap. So it's an advantage that the rest are going to try and close down. Of course, it is a circuit that is much more than just Carbonell, though it's perhaps the most iconic corner around this circuit. 4.2 kilometres for this Misano World Circuit, Marcus Simoncelli. 16 corners, of which Álvaro Arenas is now into the 15th of them. You can see some of those ripples through the left-hander of 15. It's not a massively bumpy circuit, but there are those sort of gentle ripples through the last couple of corners. And Álvaro Arenas looking set to lift himself up from 17th in the order, and he climbs 12 places now into 5th.
Yeah, there was another comment that many riders were making yesterday. This track surface that was laid down, I can't remember exactly the year, a couple of years ago at least, offers up really excellent grip. And there's no sort of degradation. The tyres can go full race distance at absolutely flat chat, as Jorge Navarro just makes a bit of a mess of turn 13 just there. However, I bumped into Joe Roberts earlier today, just when I was walking into the paddock, and he was saying it is really bumpy out there. It's not like profound, big, huge bumps that you see, but there's just lots of ripples all the way around the track. And it can be very difficult to kind of keep yourself on the racing line on occasion when you're facing those bumps. We know that this Misano World Circuit is a circuit that is used very often for all types of racing, not just the 2-wheel kind. And it does seem as though the ripples around here have got a little bit more pronounced since last year. So that is causing a few challenges for riders, I think, across all the categories.
What to say, Neil? Another rider once again, just as he was this time last weekend, who's catching the eye is Danny Holgado, who's just got into 2nd place. His last 2 laps have both been 1:35 zeros, and he's really caught Alonso. We saw him on screen a moment ago. Alonso's lost 8 tenths to Holgado in the last 2 laps, and the 2 Aspar teammates are now firmly together on the racetrack. So Danny Holgado once again demonstrating on this Saturday morning, which is generally his session where he goes for the race simulation, that he's got the kind of pace which could threaten the front row today and the podium tomorrow. Álvaro Arenas is now your Friday and Saturday morning leader at 34.9 for Arenas. That compares to a 35.0 that he did in practice yesterday.
Holgado doing those lap times in his 12th lap of the session. So very strong rhythm once again from Danny Holgado. I'm going to hold my hands up right now and say I did not expect 15 races into his debut season that Danny Holgado would A, have won a race, and B, be showing the kind of speed to suggest that he'd go on and win more races before the end of the year. I always had him down as a very talented rider who fought for championships in Moto 3, but I certainly didn't have him on the level of the likes of David Alonso, maybe even put someone like Colin Baird ahead of him from what he managed to achieve in the Moto 3 category. But Holgado's performances across this season have been so impressive, and you pointed this out yesterday. He's actually jumped up into 7th in the championship, so he's not only just had a few real standout rides that have captured brilliant results, like his teammate David Alonso, but he's consistently been there, more or less inside the top 10, bar a little drop-off mid-season when he was having those issues with arm pump. But since he kind of got back on track just before the summer break in Brno, He has been absolutely awesome. Looks as though he can continue that run here this weekend.
Feels like there's a real maturity about Danny Holgado now, even when you watch him speak to our colleagues in the broadcasting set, which seems to do a lot nowadays with his recent upturn in form. There seems to be a real calmness, a real maturity. He really has improved his English too over the last year or two. As he's having to get rather accustomed to speaking to the world media, who, the more you succeed, the more the media want a piece of you. As they realise that a serious big deal in this paddock now, and Danny Holgado is really starting to establish himself as that. And we are extrapolating a long way forward here into this time next year, but there's talk so much in MotoGP about contracts being up at the end of next season, with the regulations reset coming in 2027, which is leading to potentially thoughts of some reshuffling around in the MotoGP paddock. Well, that of course means with contracts up in MotoGP that potentially there's more opportunity than there have been previously for some Moto2 riders to move up into that, so that's certainly going to be a big feature of next season. And we are expecting this rookie crop of 2025 to really step up and challenge consistently for race victories, if not the World Championship. 6.5 minutes to go, and this is your new leader. Alonso Lopez, winner of this Grand Prix back in 2022. I have to say, I'm racking my brains and I'm struggling to think of the last time we've seen Lopez top a session, but this might be about to end in a free practice too. And certainly continuing to see further evidence that the Boscoscuro is working pretty well around this Misano circuit.
Yeah, decent time now from Lopez. They obviously, that team and that chassis talked yesterday afternoon with the hands of Celestino Vietti as the Boscoscuro looks on. Where is Vietti in the session down? In 13th, rather fittingly. I'm sure the alarm bells won't be ringing. Might be ringing ever so slightly for a rider in 17th. Aaron Canet has not really shown any sign of a step forward in this session. We're getting to this crunch point in the season where I might start losing hope that Canet can turn this around, Lewis, if I'm being brutally honest.
Feels as if he's going to need some fortune from, or some misfortune for Mario Gonzalez and Diogo Moreira, and obviously fortune from his point of view to keep him in the mix. He's just not got the pure pace, has he, at the moment to stay in a championship challenge. Although, certainly one thing Aaron Canet is not going to do is back away from a challenge or a fight. Does he seem to deliver his best when his back is against the wall? It is starting to get towards that sort of feeling, isn't it? In Moto2, it almost has the feeling now that we're likely to see a two-way fight between Gonzalez and Moreira in the closing stages of this season, because both of those certainly look like they've got race winning potential this weekend, and I think Jay Dixon looks like he's got the same. This could be a new lap record in Moto2. It's not quite, it's 300 shy of what Celestino Vietti did yesterday. You can see the joy there in the Mark VDS box as Dixon takes top spot.
Yeah, I think that was Sam Lowes and his young daughter there making an appearance. Sam, obviously, Mark VDS's World Superbike rider, offering up some support here this weekend. Tricky weekend for Sam in Magny-Cours just 1 week ago in the World Superbike Championship, but certainly the speed was there. It just didn't quite pan out as he would have wished in the 3 races. Good to see Sam consistently up among the top and fastest names. Stefano Arbolino puts a bit of a move on Holgado. Holgado just backing out and thinking, you know what, I don't need to get this kind of aggressive in FP2. Arbolino trying to rescue his weekend after the difficulties yesterday. So we're seeing quite a few improvers here coming in towards the end of the session. Difficult to know exactly who is on which tyre combination, who is just fitted a soft tyre towards the end of the session. There's a bit of a prelude preparation for qualifying coming up this afternoon. But Alex DeAngelis on the right of your screen there, 250cc race winner. Pretty impressed with that recent lap time there for Tony.
Yeah, because certainly on one half of the Blue Crew Pramac Boscoscuro box, it has been going quite well. Ethan Guevara strong yesterday inside the top 10 in both sessions, and he was particularly pleased that the best lap time he set yesterday was on his own. Didn't need any kind of reference or tow. Here is Guevara on the 28, just ahead of Colin Vyatt. Vyatt's up into 8th place now in this session. Of course, we told you before the session got underway of exactly where his problems were yesterday, and he has made a big step in this morning session. He's a second faster now than he was yesterday. Next to him yesterday was a 36.0. He's down now to a 35.1 and improving on this current lap. Could potentially get himself into the 34s if he ends this lap very well. Sure whether Guevara up ahead of him has helped with that, and Via has just about failed to improve on a 35.1, but signs of the Via that is qualified and finished in the top 10 in the last 3 Grand Prix now returning to us in Misano.
Yeah, you have to almost think that this is his practice session from yesterday, because he is one session behind the rest. It's been a pretty good session from Barry Baltus. We didn't really mention him in our movers and shakers for the potential win tomorrow, but there were a whole host of riders yesterday afternoon doing kind of mid to high 1 minute 35s, and Baltus was very consistent. He was maybe not, within a couple of tenths per lap of what Vietti could do, but few were. I think Baltus could be a bit of an outside shot for the podium.
Just watching Vietti, look at that, as he came through the third sector, he came from a quarter of a second down on Dixon to now within half a tenth of him. Just again underlining the advantage Vietti's got, and through the fast right-handers in sector 3. We've currently got a Boscoscuro 1-2-3, and I think that's going to become a 1-2-3-4 here. As number 13 crosses the line, just to Vietti. Look at the time he gained in the second half of the lap. With ease, Vietti takes top spot back again.
I was just checking, not quite a new lap record for Celestino Vietti, but really knocking on the door. It's just 200ths of a second away from his own new lap record that he set yesterday afternoon. So times very fast here at the end of this Moto 2 FP2 session. And Gonzalez is dropped down to 15th, but I have to imagine he's just still out there cutting laps. Lost a lot of time in that third sector just there before he decided to give up the ghost.
Interesting to see that Gonzalez is down in 15th place and hasn't done anything better than a 35.2 in this session so far. Some questions for him to answer. The championship contenders, we've got Moreira 6th, Gonzalez 15th, and Aaron Canet down in 19th as Tony Arbolino now cuts the line with 1 more lap to go. He's lapping quite nicely in the 35s.
Look at this from Aaron Canet. We saw this in Hungary where he'd been nowhere all weekend and he threw in a fast lap right towards the end of FP2, but Vietti is on course to absolutely obliterate his own lap record. He is a quarter of a second up. We've got a yellow flag in sector number 1. Not sure exactly what was going on there, but we could see Canet jump up. We could see a new lap record for Vietti here.
Jorge Navarro, who has a long lap penalty to serve tomorrow for his crash with Salaj last weekend. He's down at turn 2 at 34.624. Vietti did lose a little bit of time in that final sector, but it is still a new all-time lap record, beating his own mark from yesterday.
Brilliant stuff from Vietti, and Canet jumps up the order into 8th. Not quite as spectacular as what we saw from him 2 GPs ago on a Saturday morning. He was very fast to top the FP2 session. But at least there were some late signs of improvement for Aron as Navarro walks away. Shoulders a bit slumped, and here is what happened. Coming through turn number 2. And he lost it way before.
The bike appeared into picture, the rider didn't, unfortunately. That was Jorge Navarro up on his feet. He's 6th at the end of the session for him. He's teaming out to Screech with 1 place up ahead in 25th. No personal bests, with the exception of Danny Munoz on our timing screens at the moment. So, Celestino Vietti is going to top his 2nd session in a row here at the San Marino Grand Prix. And if he wasn't already the favourite for this San Marino Grand Prix weekend, he certainly is now. After that pair of 34.6s at the end of the session, I believe Luca Boscoscuro will be pleased with the morning's event. They lock out the top 4.
Yeah, possibly the first top 4 lockout since, the race in Austin, perhaps? And then we have wet conditions, but Vietti is looking very formidable here on home soil. Say, we'll go away and analyse what happened lap by lap in this session, but just in terms of sheer speed, there is no questioning that Vietti has it within him to take pole position this year. It would be his first pole position of 2025. He's not been a front row hound at all. His qualifying record has been very, very up and down, as it has been pretty much throughout his entire career. But he was under the lap record again here this morning at Misano. And 600ths of a second clear of this rider here, Jake Dixon, continuing his fine form. Hasn't been outside the top 4 in any of the 3 sessions so far here this weekend.
Vietti, Dixon, Arbolino, Lopez, the quartet of Oscuros, right up at the top. Tony Arbolino will be as pumped up in a discussion with there as used on our graphics bottom line of your screen there. Having, yes, in some ways, righted the wrongs of what happened yesterday afternoon. He'd only truly do that, I guess, if he gets through qualifying 1. Problems that were beyond Arbolino's control, in fairness, yesterday, with a technical problem right at the start of the session. It's much more like it for him. Under the radar, I think, would be the polite way of describing Manu Gonzalez's morning session. He was still doing 35 sixes at the end of practice this morning. If that was on the same set of tyres, then perhaps it's not as bad as it looks. But perhaps the same can't be said for this man, Arakinet, who did lift himself up into 8th place at the end of the session, but I'm not sure he's completely answered all the questions you were asking of him when the session began. Diogo Moreira to complete our trio of title chasers. 6th place for him. He was the last rider in the 34s. He set his best lap quite early in that session, actually. As others improved late on. Moreira, whatever he does in practice, you generally come to expect him to feature on the front 2 rows when it's all on the line. But it is Chelsea Vietti who extends his incredible run this weekend. Fastest yesterday afternoon and fastest this morning. A new lap record for Chile. A Boscoscuro top 4 with Dixon, Arbolino and Lopez next up. Calix is completing the top 10 with Arenas and Moreira next up from Baltas, Kinet, Bafante, Colgado and Munoz with Colin Vire 11th, Alonso 12th, Aegis, Ramirez, Guevara and Gonzalez only 16th for the World Championship leader. Huerta 17th from Sasaki, Balach and Vonta van den Gorberg. Alberto Ferrandez, he made progress this morning after his crash yesterday, up into 21st ahead of his fellow wildcard, Alberto Sura. Well, after a fantastic Friday, it's a Super Saturday so far for Celestino Vietti. He remains the man to beat in Moto2. MotoGP Free Practice 2 is coming up next. Close to beach of Rimini, Riccioni and Catola collide in Misano World Circuit. Marco Simoncelli hosts Spaniard for the Red Bull Grand Prix of San Marino. Misano has won an 8 race to feature an action-packed 3 months, with MotoGP soon to go globetrotting to Motegi, Mandalika, Philippon and Sepang. The back of the Q2 places tops the morning agenda ahead of the Tissot sprint later. It's time for MotoGP. So measuring 4.226 miles, just over 2.6 miles in length, 16 corners, 10 right, 6 left, a very short 530 metre start finish straight. Is the Misano World Circuit. Marco Simoncelli, 32nd time. We're set to go Grand Prix racing in Italy's Adriatic coast. Heartbreaking that first corner into Sector 1. Very, very tricky breaking the turns 9 and 10. We saw Frankie Morbidelli and Juan Mir have crashes there yesterday. Turn 16 also caught out a couple of riders on a dramatic Friday. 1, 8, 9 and 10 are the most demanding braking points here in San Marino. good morning and welcome to what is a very sunny San Marino. It's the sunshine shining on already packed grandstands. The grassy hillsides are getting pretty busy as well as we get set for our 16th Sprint Saturday of 2025. Marc Marquez inching, creeping ever closer to capturing that 7th MotoGP World Championship. It can't be done here this weekend in the Red Bull Grand Prix of San Marino. That was because his brother Alex produced one of the rides of his life. Just 6 days ago now, at the Circuit de Barcelona, Catalonia, Alex's second ever MotoGP victory, making it impossible for Marc to clinch the crown here this weekend. But on practice Friday, it was the Ducati Lenovo star that once again made all the front running. Marc led the way on day one here in Italy. A 1:30.480, put him a tenth and a half clear of Marco Bezzecchi, who looked really strong, really fast on the factory Aprilias. Both the factory Aprilias getting directly through to Q2 yesterday. Jorge Martin taking advantage of a bit of a toe behind Bez. Was 8th quickest. Frankie Morbidelli, who had to miss the first 10 minutes of FP1. There was a crash late on in FP1 as well for the Italian, a session that he did lead, and he was also inside the top 3 at the end of play yesterday. A 1:30.480 though, as mentioned, did put Marc top of the pile ahead of Bezzecchi. Morbidelli, Bagnaia looking back on song, a former winner here, of course, in Misano. Alex Marquez, Joan Mir despite a late crash at turn 9. Luca Marini, strong again on the factory Honda. Martin, Acosta, and the Gian Antonio. They are your 10 riders that have already made it safely through to Q2 later on this morning. Just missing out were our 2 French flyers, Zarco and Quattararo, Binder, Vinales, Raul Fernandez, and a real heavy fall late from yesterday at turn 15. He ended the day in 15. P15 did the Trackhouse rider. Canavania Bastianini, we didn't see him struggling as much as he did yesterday. The Beast only 17th quickest, had a Fermin Aldeguer, the rookie, who's having his struggles as well on the VK Brasilia Racing Ducati. And finally, after all the talk, all the hype, we did for the first time get to see in competitive action the brand new Yamaha V4 powered Wisdar and one in the hands of test rider Augusto Fernandez. And despite some early teething problems and a crash for Fernandez on Friday, some very, very promising signs indeed, as he finished 19th quickest ahead of Rins, Agura, Oliveira and Chantra. So yeah, very positive early signs for the new era that Yamaha are currently embarking on. Matt Burton Lewis going to be in the commentary box. Jack Appleyard down in pit lane, getting set to talk you through all. Box yesterday with Christian Pupelin lending some help to Luca Marini. This time, he's in the corner of the 2-time world champion. Yet lots of grip on offer around this Misano circuit and track knowledge. You always felt that this was going to be an ideal time for Bagnaia to get his season back on track. With the extra grip, he said he can use more of the rear to stop the bike. The rear just sitting down onto the tarmac better rather than having it floating around and then pushing the front, which has been his problem for so much of the season. He has gone back to the shorter stroke Öhlins front forks. Less pitching on the front. He hasn't used those since Aragon. That's clearly a benefit as well yesterday. More home round special helmets. As Lewis just mentioned, this is now the tradition started all those years ago by Valentino Rossi. This is Frankie's special version. And it was a real strong Friday, you have to say, for Morbidelli. Fastest, as we mentioned, in FP1. 3rd quickest at the close of play yesterday afternoon. There was that tip-off at turn 10. And he said he's loving the vibe, loving the love and the energy from his home crowd. Well, let's see if they can inspire Frankie to get another podium challenge. Yeah, that's the kind of quote that if you didn't know who'd said it, you could have probably guessed Frankie Morbidelli. That sounds very much like him. Up inside the top three yesterday. Here's the reigning world champion, Jorge Martin, who, if you follow MotoGP on social media, was last seen riding a scooter with Formula One star Lando Norris on the back of it earlier in the day. Some teamwork down at the factory Aprilia squad ensured that both of their riders made their way through to Q2, although both riders said that this wasn't a pre-planned strategy. They just happened to leave the pits together, and Jorge said, let's follow and see if I can learn something. He certainly did. Got himself down to a 1:30.857, which earned him a place in Q2. Yeah, as I said yesterday, teamwork makes the dream work, and it's been an excellent weekend so far for the Nuali factory riders. Aprilia is starting to look like Jorge Martin's motorcycle. He said himself yesterday, really starting to gel with the bike. Now things are starting to click, and this was a lovely shot post-session as they both embraced. Yeah, hanging out with F1 superstar Lando Norris in the paddock last night. A helping hand from Marco Bezzecchi. He's got friends in high places here this weekend, hasn't he? Jorge Martin. A relief for Jorge because his race pace over the last few weeks has been brilliant. We know he struggled to get the best out of a soft rear tyre of late. Straight into Q2 for just the second time in 6 starts this year. There's the special one-off helmet design for Marco Bezzecchi here this weekend. I'll let the Italian viewers amongst us translate that. He did say when myself and Jack Appleyard spoke to him on our Gear Up show on Thursday, he said, yeah, I've got a cool special helmet designed, but unless you're Italian, you might not quite understand what it is. So we will leave that to those of you from home to tell us what that was all about. What a bid you got for us then on this Saturday morning? Looks like we've got a T-Rex there, doesn't it? That's a very early version. Baby did you? Yeah, baby did you? A very early Fabio Di Giannantonio. Yeah, look at the dinosaur on the fairing there on that little pocket bike. And so a proper throwback for Di Giannantonio. Relief for him on his side of VR46 Racing as well yesterday. The number 49 was buzzing to get himself into Q2. He said, all year, one of my main issues on the GP25 has been when I've got a brand new soft rear tyre fitted, there's just too much grip. I mean, not very often you hear a rider talk about too much rear grip, but it overpowers the front. And he said, I always felt that was going to be exaggerated here in Misano, where it's so super grippy. He needed a bit of a break on a Friday, hasn't he? Did you? He got it first time directly into Q2 since the German Grand Prix at the Saxonry. But this is the rider they're all trying to chase. Marc Marquez, who saw his winning streak ended, although if there's one rider he would have minded it ended by, it's Alex Marquez, who took the 25 points and denied him that match point here this weekend with victory in Barcelona. But Alex Marquez was at the top of the queue of riders saying that Marc would appear to have a step over the rest. It seemed pretty clear yesterday. Even though he was having some troubles through Sector 3, Marc Marquez ultimately got to the bottom of those and ended the day a 10th clear of the rest. Yeah, and what was looking rather ominous for the opposition was in the early part of practice yesterday when he was focusing entirely on race pace. Marc did a 1:31.129 on 19-lap-old medium tyres. That was faster than 11 riders managed in time attack mode on fresh soft rubber. Marc himself was so in the zone, so confident with his pace that he only did one time attack, only fitted one soft rear tyre in that practice session yesterday. So quite clearly, I think Alex Marquez himself said a step or maybe even two ahead of the field yesterday was Marc. And as I just mentioned, we saw him having his issues in that Sector 3, those fast rights, which have always been a bit of an Achilles heel for Marc throughout his career. Cabone, he said, was a bit of an issue. Didn't really matter, he was still fastest, wasn't he, in that third sector yesterday. So all the signs are pointing towards Marc Marquez being the big favourite for yet another sprint and Grand Prix double. Of course, the key session to come this morning, qualifying two. Actually, Marc Marquez had his issues in recent times. Only one pole in the last 4 now for Marc Marquez, which counts as something of a drought by his very high standards as we take a look at Luca Marini, one of 2 factory Hondas automatically through to qualifying 2. They were 6th and 7th, Mir and Marini, yesterday, as their progress continues to be reflected in their results. Having just used that one soft tyre in practice yesterday, I do wonder with a mark 4.226 kilometres, quite short, quite tight, this Misano circuit, whether at the back of his mind he was already thinking of a possible two-stop strategy in Q2 coming up later on this morning. Well, it's clear signs, crystal clear signs that Honda are moving in the right direction finally. After a real torrid last 3 or 4 years, HRC, well, certainly their engineers, led by Romano Albertiano, of course, now former brilliant tech guru. We saw some additional air updates yesterday, the Stegosaurus additions to the rear seat unit. And the Hondas are coming, no question. Joan Mir, despite what was a very painful get-off late on in practice at turn 9, left him with a bit of a sore neck. He was going to be having a little physio last night and this morning with 6 fastest, 1 place ahead of Marini, who just looks so confident right now on that RC213V, does Luca. Best Friday of the season so far for the home hero. Straight into Q2 down the last 3 Grand Prix. Promising signs, very much so, for HRC. 6th, 7th and 11th with Jean Zarco just outside the top 10 yesterday. Zarco did get his hands on some performance upgrades in the afternoon, which he said he liked the feel and the look of, which certainly was reflected after he was way down the back of the order in pre-practice 1 yesterday morning, but jumped up to 11 in the afternoon. Zarco will be one to watch in qualifying 1. Claudio Domenicali of the Ducati Top Brass is here, CEO, of course, of Ducati. Of course, this is such a special circuit for them. Well, Ducati Week is held here during the summer break. This is very much the most home of home Grand Prix for Ducati Corsa. We're about an hour away from their home in Borgo Panigale. Yeah, of course, it was right here last year where Enea Bastianini gave them their 100th Premier Class victory. And one of several very memorable days in Ducati's recent history. Last time out, of course, they won their 6th successive Constructor Prize. Let's go down and say a very good morning in the San Marino sunshine to Jack. Good morning, buddy. Yeah, good morning, guys. Good morning to everybody at home. I just wanted to talk about the Yamaha V4 that, of course, made its debut yesterday, grabbed headlines as a result. But I thought it was very interesting from speaking to Augusto Fernandez yesterday. That was the very first time that he'd had the opportunity to put a brand new software tyre in the rear and really go at it in time attack mode, and he admitted that lap time really surpassed my expectations and everybody else's expectations in the box as well. I think once you take into consideration the fact that on the top speed charts it is dead last, which gives you an indication that because it's just in its infancy, they've probably got that V4 engine dialed up to what, 85-90% of what it's going to be capable of. Alex Rins said, looking at the data as well, Augusto being a test rider was maybe just ever so slightly tentative through Caverne, turn 11, and was losing 3/10 of a second to both himself and Fabio Quartararo. So you add all of these factors together, and he's still just 6/10 of a second slower than what Fabio was able to do. Yamaha have done magnificently because that V4 powered M1 is a real beast, and I don't think it's out of the question that Fabio Quartararo jumping on that bike would instantly be probably a second quicker than what Augusto is doing, and that's without sort of taking anything away from the performance of Augusto Fernandez. How good Fabio is, so Yamaha can be really confident that they've got something that's going to take them to that next level in 2026. I think there's reason to get excited for everyone associated with Yamaha, because from that one early sign yesterday, there is so many positives to take from it. Yeah, indeed, Jack, absolutely. Very eye-catching first outing, wasn't it? Certainly in front of the public. And their first debut for Augusto Fernandez and that new V4 Yamaha 19 fastest with a 131.678. Fernandez spoke to me last night and said the clear improvement, he said, compared to the traditional inline force in that Yamaha run throughout and the MotoGP history is rear grip, which we know something Yamaha engineers have been searching for, it seems, forever. There's quite a nice line actually from Fernandez, because there has been so much attention, there's been so much focus on the development behind the scenes of this V4 when it will be debuted. Fernandez said he never used to get so much media attention when he was winning the Moto2 World Championship. He's been besieged by the media, hanging on his every word about the performance of this V4. And of course, there was some of the good news that we mentioned yesterday. Fernandez has been retained by Yamaha as a test rider for 26
and 2027, which will feature a bunch of wild cards. And if, unfortunately, we hope that doesn't happen, but if any of Yamaha's quartet of riders find themselves injured at some point, well, their designated super sub will beat Fernandez.
It wasn't lost on him, was it? The history he was making yesterday. It's Yamaha, but in MotoGP in many respects. Yesterday morning, so much attention, as he said yesterday, on what he was up to. And despite that little glitch in the morning, it was generally an overall positive day for Augusto Fernandez. Of course, in previous years, Yamaha, they've been trying to make progress with the inline four. They've been trying to bring more power to that motorcycle, but they've been out going down the straight, but that's always cost them the famed front handling and front end that Yamaha's got. So the V4 potentially going to end that, although the V4 is now on the floor for the second time this weekend. That is Augusto Fernandez down, as he was yesterday afternoon.
Yeah, it's turn 2, second time. That's an almost identical crash. If you overlay the videos from yesterday's practice session to that tip-off at turn 2, they're pretty much identical as far as Fernandez goes. So just having his issues negotiating that first sector, and in particular, tight the left-hander as you start the lap here. Fernandez had already put in a 132.6. Clearly, the early signs are incredibly positive, aren't they? As far as Yamaha are concerned, they're only going to get better and better, faster and faster. And with more data and information, they have repeatedly told everybody that's listening in the paddock, and that is the entire paddock, that this is just a data gathering exercise this weekend. They're not looking at position, they're not bothered about results at all. And I'm actually feeling rather sore this morning is Joan Mir after his heavy crash at turn 9. Yes, there, we had no time set at the moment as far as the Spaniard's concerned. He looks a bit ashen-faced there, doesn't he? Well, this is him trail braking for so long you are there into turn 9. Well, like a rather innocuous slide, he's bottom, didn't it, into the gravel trap. A little tap on his wrist, a bit of a sore neck as well. From Joan Mir, so let's hope that that's not going to keep him out of action at any point here this weekend. Well, of course, there's been so much talk about the new Yamaha V4. Of course, in the present, in the current, they've still got business to attend to on track this weekend. Jackman a 16th yesterday, Miguel Oliveira 22nd. Certainly not an easy start to the weekend for the Portuguese ride. Let's get the thoughts of their boss, Gino Borsoy, in the Jack.
Yeah, and just firstly, a little birdie tells me that this is Gino's 500th Grand Prix in the paddock from either racing or team boss at Aspar, now at Prima Pramac. Is that true? Is it 500 this weekend?
Yeah, that's true. Seems that I'm quite old. Yes, it is a long journey, nice and good journey for me. Of course, I enjoy a lot every time I'm on track. I'm still like fresh in my mind at the beginning of my career. So it's a special weekend for me. 500 races, no miss one day in 29 years. So means that also on the other side I quite like it because no injury, no problem. Injury when I was riding for sure. But another big issue, so means that I'm really happy, and for that reason I have to be happy.
Congratulations on achieving 500. Yesterday, obviously, so many people were fascinated to see how Augusto and the new V4 got on. It surprised me. I spoke to Augusto. He said that it surprised him. How happy were you to see the obvious performance level straight away from that?
But we are all happy because the performance of the bike was really good, much better than what we expected, honestly speaking. Between let's say, the actual bike. The new one is not huge, of course. We know we have to work a lot on the bike. We have a lot of work to do in front of us. But anyway, as a first step, as a first race, we start straight away a really good performance. So at the moment, we are happy, and let's see what we can do for the last 2 months before the end of the season. They are in program a lot of tests, and but the idea is quite clear. On the, let's say, on the engine, we need to improve a lot, but as a chassis and feeling with the bike, it's really a big step forward from normal.
I know that publicly Yamaha are saying, oh, we haven't made the decision yet whether we're going to run it in 2026, but I mean, from that yesterday, it's obvious, right? They have to go with that.
Well, I mean, not my dad's gonna be able to reply. On this answer, they having program to prepare everything ready for next year. Let's see if they are ready, but everybody wanna have the new bike for next year.
In terms of just finally looking at your squad for next week, you've obviously got two riders in Jack Miller and Top Black your crew. Have you now got two crew chiefs confirmed as well? There was some talk coming into this weekend that Yamaha have managed to sign Alberto Giribiola to become Top Black's crew chief next year. Is that correct?
Well, it's something that we are still studying. We are working on it, and I think between here and the next day we will know something more.
Thank you very much, Gino. We'll wait for further news.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks very much then, Jack. Thanks to Gino Borsoi, and many congratulations. 500 Grand Prix. That is some record. I can't be too far myself, to be honest. I need to track up the old appearances to see where we're at. Well, unfortunately, as we feared, it is bad news as far as factory underwriter Joan Mir is concerned. He was complaining about a pain in his neck after the crash at turn 9 yesterday. We saw him in his leather. He was declared fit for today's action, but having spoken to team management at HRT, he has decided to withdraw from the whole of today's action. No qualifying and no sprint then as far as me is concerned. Hoping to be back fit for tomorrow's 27-lap Grand Prix.
Yes, significant discomfort and limited mobility in his neck is the official line from Honda. They've elected to miss today's running to focus on Sunday, so we will not be seeing Joan Mir in qualifying nor in the Tissot sprint later on today. Well, we haven't been seeing much of Brad Binder on the racetrack either this morning. Yesterday, he had problems with his chain breaking free, which is why he didn't get a time attack in at the end of practice, and it would appear as if the same problem, look, you can see just on the rear tyre there for Brad Binder, that was yesterday. Similar problems this morning, and you could see Binder when the problems flew up this morning that he was absolutely livid. The lightning, unfortunately, has struck twice for the South African.
No chain, no gain for Brad Binder then. Yeah, what a nightmare, costing him some vital lap times here. So no Mir for the remainder of Sprint Saturday, which is a real hammer blow as far as he's concerned, because if he is fit to start tomorrow's 27-lap Grand Prix, of course, it will be from the back of the grid.
P12, of course.
P12, yeah.
Into Q2.
Yeah, did get through into Q2. But there is Binder. That chain proving a real pain for him right now. The second is that leads this session with a 131.013. Bez looks mint this weekend. He looks really strong, of course. He knows every millimetre of this Misano World Circuit Marco Simoncelli track. He's here all the time on production bikes for the VR46 Academy. And this is impressive. This is looking very, very strong. And he needs 2 tenths clear of the Marquez brothers at the moment. Mark, the only rider within 2 tenths of Bez so far this morning, is yet another chain inspection that is underway down at KTM.
Problem that you very rarely see, let alone twice in 2 sessions, so something fundamentally not quite right there in the KTM camp. It wasn't the greatest day overall, was it, for the KTMs collectively yesterday? They do have one rider into Q2, Pedro Costa in 9th place, but the quartet of RC16 riders all complaining about a lack of stability on board their bikes yesterday.
Yeah, Costa, he was certainly one of them. Said too much pumping from the rear tyre. That makes it hard to be consistent with the bike moving around so much. Like at times you're riding on a cobbled street. Bastianini, as we mentioned, he really was suffering yesterday with that sort of nervous feeling on the KTM, particularly going through Cavone. When you're going through a 6-gear corner with a lack of stability, well, that's a pretty perilous situation to find yourself, isn't it, for the Beast? He was only 20th fastest in Sector 3 yesterday, wasn't he? He was losing 4 tenths in Split 3 to Mark alone. So quite clear where he's going to be chasing time this morning. And he just said that the rear, around this grippy Misano circuit, a lot of grip on the heel of Misano. The rear was just pushing the front too much, and that was adding to several sins for the Beast here yesterday.
Once again, Fabio Quartararo there in the Yamaha box. Perhaps he's the biggest surprise at the top 10.
See, it's a Yamaha success here over the years, and Colorado's won a world championship here back in 2021. His big problem, amongst many, was that he wasn't really getting much of a step out of a soft tyre. But he found no real difference between the soft or the medium rear tyre yesterday.
Let's go back down to Tick Lane. They're one of the best. That's whoever throw his leg over a Grand Prix motorcycle was a double MotoGP world champion and now new a Hall of Famer. It's always a pleasure to get the thoughts of Casey Stoner, who joins Jack.
Yeah, he does indeed. Obviously, we had Kevin in the box yesterday. Casey also part of that brilliant event on Thursday night. Firstly, congratulations on becoming a part of the Hall of Fame, to be amongst the biggest names that this sport has ever seen. How much pride is absolutely to be a part of that event and that elite club on Thursday.
Yeah, well, to be up and alongside people that, you know, you spent most of your career watching and growing up sort of idolising, and never ever would I consider myself alongside those gentlemen, and so it's an amazing, you know, opportunity that we get to be, very, very thankful for everything.
We saw yesterday you were spending a lot of time in the Honda box with Luca in particular. Was that Alberto's idea? How did that all come together for you to spend some time? And Luca was very thankful yesterday, saying that you offered some tips in the morning, looking out on track, and then working closer with the team in the afternoon.
Yeah, no, I've got no obligations anywhere up and down this paddock, so it's pretty much me walking up and down pit lane, and I watch some things out on track, and when I do see things, I can just give a little bit of advice here and there. But honestly, they're the ones, so it's, that was nothing to do with me yesterday. That was them, sort of doing what they needed to do. For everyone there at the Honda garage, I had some fantastic years there, and still have what I consider family around that kind of thing. Again, I appreciated everything Honda did for me and gave me, and so I was just in there visiting them. And letting you know what I saw on track.
And the progress that Honda, certainly close to some of race have been making, has been extraordinary. We knew that they weren't going to be languishing at the bottom of the championship for a while, and certainly with the parts they've been bringing and the amount of parts